The air in this Sunnyside Inn room smells like stale cigarettes and regret. It's 3:47 a.m., and I'm surrounded by the ghost of my former life, stuffed unceremoniously into black trash bags. My reflection in the dark TV screen shows a man I barely recognize, hollowed out, sleep-deprived, but with a cold fire in his eyes I haven't seen before. My phone, sitting on the cheap laminate nightstand, has been vibrating incessantly for the last 48 hours. It's my brother, Ethan, begging, pleading, demanding I pick up. He should have known this was coming. He, of all people, should have known that when you push someone far enough, they don't always break. Sometimes, they learn to push back. The golden child, and the girl of my dreams. Let me give you the cast of this little tragedy. My name is Liam. I'm 28, and for the last 5 years, I've worked a steady, if unremarkable, job as a shift supervisor at a massive logistics warehouse. It's honest work. It pays the bills. My brother, Ethan, is 32. He's the son to my shadow, the golden child our parents couldn't help but dote on. He's got the sharp suit, the high-flying finance job, the company-issued sedan, and a reservoir of that slick, effortless confidence that makes people either want to be his best friend or knock his perfect teeth out. I've always leaned towards the latter, but he's blood. That's supposed to mean something, right? Then there's Chloe. She's 26. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue a year and a half ago. She was radiant, the kind of woman whose presence makes a room feel brighter. She had a sharp mind, a degree in communications, and an Insta-feed that looked like a professional lifestyle magazine. With her, I always felt like I was punching above my weight. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me with a peculiar expression, a mix of affection and what I now recognize as faint surprise, as if she couldn't quite believe this was her life. I should have paid more attention to that look. The signs were all there, hiding in plain sight. The way her phone would light up with a text, and she'd flip it over with practiced speed. The way she'd laugh, just a little too loudly, at Ethan's tired jokes during Sunday dinners. Her newfound, sudden curiosity about my work schedule, asking about overtime shifts with an interest she'd never shown before. "Just want to know when I'll have you all to myself," she'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 18 months. 18 months of my life, built on a foundation of lies. The day the world fell apart. Last Thursday started like any other day. The morning air was crisp, my coffee was hot, and the hum of the warehouse was a familiar comfort. But around 2 p.m., a critical conveyor belt system went down. The mechanics said it would be hours, so they sent our entire shift home early. I texted Chloe, "Good news, system failure at work. I'll be home by 4, instead of 7. See you soon." No reply. I wasn't worried. She often complained about her phone's notifications being spotty. I drove home humming along to the radio, thinking about what we could do with an unexpected free evening. Maybe try that new Italian place downtown. I parked my car and walked up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment, the one I'd found, but she'd insisted we put in both our names. I unlocked the door at 3:52 p.m. The apartment was quiet, but I heard muffled voices coming from our bedroom. I figured she was on a work call, maybe with her headset on. Then I heard it. A deep, familiar laugh. It was Ethan's laugh, that same arrogant, booming sound from our childhood, usually right after he'd taken my favorite toy or beaten me at a video game. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stood frozen in the hallway, a statue of dread. "He's just stuck, you know?" It was Ethan's voice, dripping with faux concern. "Liam's a good guy, but he's never going to reach for more. 5 years at that warehouse. No drive, no ambition." "I know." Chloe's voice was softer, but the agreement was sharp as a knife. "It's getting exhausting. He's sweet, but..." "Sweet is for cupcakes, Chloe, not for the man you build a life with." Ethan's voice was closer now, more intimate. "You need someone who knows what he wants, someone who isn't afraid to take it. In life, in bed." A tidal wave of hot, white rage washed over me. I should have kicked the door in, screamed, thrown something. That's what a movie character would do. Instead, I just pushed the door open. It wasn't even locked. The scene wasn't dramatic in a physical sense. It was worse. It was intimate, casual. They were just talking, sitting on my bed. Chloe was cross-legged on the comforter, leaning toward him, listening intently. Ethan was lounging against the headboard, my headboard, with one arm draped behind him, as if he owned the entire building. They both turned to look at me, not with shock or guilt, but with sheer, unadulterated annoyance at having been interrupted. "What is this?" My voice cracked, louder and shakier than I intended. I already felt like I was losing. Ethan's lips curled into that infuriating smirk, the one I've hated since I was 6 years old. "Hey, little brother, thought you were on the late shift." "Conveyor broke," I said, my eyes darting from him to her. "Why are you in my bedroom?" Chloe let out an exasperated sigh, the kind you give a toddler who's just interrupted an important adult conversation. "We were just talking, Liam." About me? I shot back. About how I have no ambition. That's when Ethan stood up. He's always been 4 inches taller than me, a fact he's never let me forget. He used his height like a weapon. Look, man, he said, stepping towards me. Someone had to tell her the truth. You're holding her back. She deserves more. More? Like you? The words tasted like acid. You're engaged to Sophia, you piece of trash. Remember her? He actually laughed. A full, hearty laugh that echoed in the small room. Soph and I have an understanding. It's a different world we operate in, Liam. You wouldn't get it. Chloe stood up too, crossing her arms over her chest. A defensive wall. Liam, this just isn't working. It hasn't been for a while. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the one I thought I loved. 18 months, flushed away in an afternoon. So instead of talking to me, you go to my brother? Because he gets it, she snapped. He listens. He understands what a woman wants out of life. Ethan took another step and put a heavy hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be a brotherly gesture, but it felt like a declaration of dominance. I wanted to snap his fingers. Liam, you've always been this way. Content with the bare minimum. Happy with the scraps. It's just who you are. Some guys are born to lead, others are born to follow. No shame in it. You're weak. You always were. The words echoed in my head. Something inside me didn't break. It clarified. It turned to ice. I saw them, for the first time, not as my brother and my girlfriend, but as two deeply selfish, cruel people. I didn't shout. I didn't swing. That's exactly what Ethan wanted. A messy, emotional scene where he could play the calm, rational adult. I pushed his hand off my shoulder. Get out of my apartment. Chloe's voice was cold. Actually, it's my apartment too, and I think you're the one who needs to leave. My brain short-circuited. What? It's over, Liam, she said, her gaze unwavering. I'm done wasting my time on someone who's going nowhere. I looked from her face to Ethan's and back again. He just shrugged. That smug half-smile plastered on his face. She needs a real man, bro. I'm just pointing out the obvious. I started grabbing my things in a daze. My laptop, my work clothes, a framed photo of my parents from my nightstand. The entire time, they just stood there, watching me, whispering to each other. At one point, I heard them laugh. When my arms were full, Chloe walked to the kitchen and came back with a handful of black trash bags. She tossed them on the floor in front of me. For the rest of it, I want your stuff gone by tomorrow. I said nothing. My silence seemed to unnerve them more than any screaming match could have. I methodically filled the bags, my movements deliberate and steady. When I finally reached the front door, my life condensed into plastic sacks. Ethan called out, "Hey, no hard feelings, right, little brother? You'll find someone else, you know, on your level." I walked out without a word and didn't look back. Less than bridge, greater than. The digital ghost. I drove for hours, with no destination in mind. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon pain. I ended up calling my buddy Dave, who, without asking too many questions, let me crash on his couch. The next morning, I used the last of my savings to rent this room at the Sunnyside Inn. As I was sorting through my belongings, trying to separate trash from treasure, I found it. My old tablet, tucked into a side pocket of a duffel bag. I'd gotten a new one for my birthday, and hadn't used this one in months. But as I powered it on, a thought sparked in my mind. The tablet was still connected to my cloud drive, the same cloud drive that Chloe's phone automatically backed up to, because she'd claimed she didn't want to pay for her own storage plan, and I, like an idiot, had added her to my family account. Nothing has happened yet. Her words from the bedroom were a blatant lie. The evidence was all there, laid out in chronological order. Months and months of messages. It started innocently enough. Ethan asking how I was doing. Chloe complaining about a bad day I'd had at work. Then, the tone shifted. The flirting started. The winky face emojis. The plans for coffee, while I was on a double shift. But the real gut punch wasn't the cheating. It was their shared contempt for me. It was a recurring theme, a private joke between them. Ethan, you should have seen Liam's face when I told him about my bonus. Same look he had when I got that brand new bike for Christmas. And he got a used one. Some people are just born to be background characters in someone else's story. Chloe, that's so mean. He does try his best. Ethan, trying your best is what they tell kids in little leagues so they don't cry. It's not the same as winning. I bet I could have you if I really wanted, just to prove a point. Chloe, you're engaged. Ethan, doesn't mean I can't show you what a real man feels like, what he'll never give you. I took screenshots of everything, every damning message, every shared photo. My blood ran cold, but my mind was clearer than it had ever been. A few quick searches on Instafeed confirmed it all. Ethan's lavish engagement party to Sophia was scheduled in 2 weeks. His big promotion at our Uncle Richard's investment firm was due to be announced next month. He had built this perfect, shiny life, and he was willing to risk it all, just to prove he could take one more thing from me. They thought I was weak because I don't lie, manipulate, and betray. They thought my silence was acceptance. They had mistaken my kindness for a lack of a spine. Sitting in that dingy motel room, surrounded by the wreckage of my life, I felt a new kind of resolve harden within me. They wanted to see what I was capable of. Fine. Class was in session. Less than bridge, greater than. The first incision. It's been 9 days since the world ended. 9 days of living in a motel where the walls are so thin I can hear the guy in the next room snoring. 9 days of meticulous, surgical planning. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about consequences. First, I called in sick to work. I needed time. I spent 2 full days organizing the evidence, creating a secure folder with nested subfolders, backing everything up multiple times. Messages, photos, chat logs, where they planned the breakup. One message from Ethan stood out, a single sentence that became my North Star. Getting with Chloe is just a bonus. Seeing the look on Liam's face when he realizes he lost to me again, that's the real prize. I mapped out what Ethan valued most. 1. His engagement to Sophia and the wealthy, influential family that came with her. 2. His promotion and reputation at our Uncle Richard's firm. 3. His status as the golden child within our family. You don't destroy a man by attacking him directly. You dismantle the pillars that hold up his world. Phase 1. The fiancé. Sophia was smart, successful, and from a family that valued integrity above all else. I found her number in my contacts from a previous family event. I sent her a simple text. Hey Sophia, it's Liam. Hope you're well. I'm trying to plan a little something for Ethan's bachelor party and wanted to get your opinion on a couple of ideas. Let me know if you have a moment to chat this week. She replied almost instantly, surprised and pleased that I was taking my best man duties so seriously, considering the circumstances. I played dumb. We agreed to meet for coffee at a chic downtown cafe. I got there 15 minutes early and sat in a corner booth. When Sophia arrived, she looked every bit the part of the perfect fiancé, poised, elegant, and kind. She started with small talk, asking if I was holding up okay after the amicable split with Chloe. She said Ethan had told her we'd simply grown apart. I let her talk. I nodded and listened patiently. Then I leaned forward slightly. Sophia, I said, my voice steady, I respect you too much to let you walk into a marriage based on a lie. Can I show you something? I passed her my phone. I watched her face as she read the first few messages. The subtle shift from confusion to disbelief, then to a sickening understanding. The color drained from her cheeks. This must be a mistake, she whispered, her eyes darting around the cafe. There's context missing. Keep scrolling, I said gently. I saw her knuckles turn white as she gripped her phone. I saw her thumb swipe down, again and again, through months of deception. When she finally looked up, her eyes were tear-free, but her hands were trembling. Has he done this before? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I hesitated. This was the moment of no return, but Ethan had already burned that bridge. I told her about Jenna from his college days, about our cousin's friend at a family reunion 2 years ago. I didn't have to embellish. I just laid out the pattern. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there for a long moment, the picture of shattered composure. Then she took a deep breath, handed back my phone, and said, Can you send me copies of everything? Phase 2. The family. My mum, a sentimental soul, had created a shared family cloud drive years ago for photos. The password has been the same for a decade, our childhood dog's name. Inside, amidst vacation photos and birthday pictures, I found what I was looking for. Visual confirmation of the pattern. A photo from Thanksgiving, where Ethan had his arm wrapped tightly around a colleague, just weeks after he'd started dating Sophia. A series of pictures from a New Year's party, where he was clearly cornering our neighbor's college-age daughter in the kitchen. The evidence wasn't just in his texts, it was in his history. Phase 3. The uncle. This was the most delicate part. Uncle Richard idolized Ethan, seeing him as the ambitious successor he'd always wanted. I couldn't just storm in with accusations. I had to plant a seed of doubt. I called his office and asked if he had time for a chat, saying I needed some career advice. We met at his stuffy, wood-paneled country club. He ordered 2 expensive scotches. I accepted mine, even though the smell alone made my stomach turn. He launched into his usual lecture about ambition and climbing the corporate ladder. I let him finish. Then, I steered the conversation toward Ethan's upcoming promotion. I'm so proud of him, I said, but I do worry. I've heard some whispers, and I wouldn't want anything to tarnish his reputation or the company's. That got his attention. "What whispers?" he asked, his brow furrowed. I pulled out my phone. "It's probably nothing," I said, feigning reluctance, but he was bragging to Chloe about how he managed to secure the big Westbridge deal. I showed him a screenshot where Ethan was boasting about taking sole credit for work his entire team had done. I showed him another where he joked about using his company expense account for a lavish weekend trip with Chloe. It wasn't illegal, just unethical. It was a crack in the pristine image of his character. Uncle Richard stared at the screen for a long time. He finished his scotch in one gulp and signaled the waiter for another. By the time we parted ways, his handshake was less firm, his eyes more distant. The seed was planted. Less than bridge, greater than. The implosion. Mum called for the obligatory, "Let's support Liam" family dinner on Thursday. I hadn't seen Ethan since D-Day. He showed up 30 minutes late, looking like he'd been dragged through a hedge backward. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt was wrinkled, and he hugged our mum for an uncomfortably long time. He avoided my gaze completely. His phone buzzed every few minutes. A text from Sophia, a call from his boss. He'd glance at the screen, his face tightening, then shove it back in his pocket. Throughout dinner, I was the model son. I complimented Mum's cooking, asked Dad about his golf game, and even initiated a game of Catan after dessert. Ethan grew more and more agitated. Finally, he excused himself to take a call in the backyard. Through the kitchen window, I could see his silhouette pacing frantically, his arms gesturing wildly. When he returned, he was pale as a ghost. By 10 p.m. he was a wreck. He mumbled an excuse about an early meeting and practically sprinted out the door. The next day, the dam broke. Friday, 9:37 a.m. A text from Ethan. "Whatever game you're playing, stop it now. This isn't funny." Friday, 11:42 a.m. A missed call from Uncle Richard. Friday, 3:22 p.m. 6 missed calls from Ethan. A voicemail where he was just breathing heavily. Then came the message from Chloe, the first in over a week. "We need to talk. Please, Liam, call me." I deleted it without a second thought. On Saturday morning, I met Sophia again. She looked exhausted but resolute. She had confronted Ethan. He'd denied, deflected, and then, faced with the evidence, tried to minimize it. She had already done her own digging, called a few old friends, and unearthed more stories. The engagement was off. She hadn't told the families yet, wanting to control the narrative herself. "I was going to marry him," she said, staring into her coffee cup. "I was planning a life with him." She looked up at me, a flicker of gratitude in her tired eyes. "You saved me." As if on cue, my phone rang. The screen read, "Ethan." Sophia's face hardened. "Answer it," she said quietly. "Put it on speaker." I hit the green button. "Hello?" Ethan's voice was a desperate, slurring mess. "What the hell did you do, Liam? What did you do?" he screamed into the phone. Sophia gave the ring back. "Richard is auditing all my accounts. You're ruining my life." I looked at Sophia. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "I'm not ruining anything, Ethan," I said, my voice calm and even. "I'm just showing people the real you. The same thing you did for me when you told Chloe I was weak." He descended into a tirade of insults, calling me jealous, pathetic, a failure. I listened for a moment, then hung up. I drove back to my motel feeling empty. Victory was supposed to taste sweet. This just tasted like ash. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Chloe. "Please answer me. I made a terrible mistake. He lied to me about everything. I never should have listened. He planned the whole thing. I didn't know. Please, Liam, I'm begging you. Too little. Far, far too late. Less than bridge, greater than." The aftermath and the new foundation. The following Monday, I was in Uncle Richard's office. It smelled of old leather and disappointment. He told me the promotion was officially off the table. He'd found a pattern of ethical discrepancies in Ethan's work. He looked more sad than angry. "I always saw myself in him," he said, shaking his head. "Now I'm not so sure what I'm looking at." I almost felt a pang of pity for Ethan. Then I remembered the sight of my life in trash bags, and the feeling vanished. A few days later, a surprising message popped up on my Insta feed. It was from Maya, Chloe's roommate. She said she had a few of my things Chloe had missed and asked if we could meet. We met on a park bench. She handed me a TJ Maxx bag containing my favorite hoodie, a couple of books, and a photo of my dog. "She lied to you for months," Maya blurted out, her expression a mixture of pity and frustration. She explained that Ethan had been a regular visitor since the winter, and that he had ghosted Chloe the second I was out of the picture. He'd told her it was all just a game to prove he could win. Chloe, she said, was a complete wreck, humiliated and heartbroken. "I don't get why you won't talk to her," Maya said. "She really did love you. She just got confused." I just looked at her. Would you take back someone who laughed while you packed your life into trash bags? She had no answer. As she was leaving, she mentioned she was looking for a new apartment, as living with Chloe had become unbearable. I told her I had just signed a lease on a new one-bedroom. It was in an old building with creaky floors, but it was mine. No traitors allowed. Last night was the first family dinner since the explosion. Ethan wasn't there. Mum said he'd moved in with a friend to reevaluate things. The meal was tense until Dad cleared his throat and asked about my new apartment. Uncle Richard mentioned a new opening in his company's logistics division that he thought I'd be perfect for. When I was leaving, my dad pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, enough to furnish my entire apartment. "This is long overdue," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Sometimes parents are slow to see which child actually needs the help. This morning, I finally decided to block Chloe's number. I read her last text one more time. "I know you'll never forgive me. I wouldn't forgive myself either. I just want you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. He never loved me. He just wanted to hurt you, and I let him." I stared at the words, feeling the vast, quiet emptiness where 18 months of my life used to be. Then I pressed block. So that's it. The great revenge is complete. Ethan's life isn't ruined forever. Men like him always land on their feet. But for the first time, he's facing real, tangible consequences. He lost his fiancée, his promotion, and his golden child halo. Chloe lost her bet on a better future and, in the process, destroyed her present. And me? I lost an illusion. In return, I gained a brutal clarity. I'm not fully healed. There's still a phantom ache where trust used to be. But I'm sleeping through the night in my new apartment. The water pressure is terrible, and my next-door neighbor is learning to play the saxophone. But it's home. Yesterday, I ran into a guy from high school who used to worship Ethan. "Hey man, how's your brother doing?" "The superstar," he said, clapping me on the back. I just smiled. "He's working through some things." I didn't need to say more. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like the little brother. I don't feel weak. I've learned that the strongest people aren't those who can take whatever they want. They're the ones who know exactly when and why to stop giving. And in the end, that strange, quiet peace feels more like a victory than any loud, explosive revenge ever could.